Hello and welcome back. I'm Nicole, a cottage witch, and it's time for the July wrap-up already, which is mystifying, but here we are. I don't have a lot of physical things to show for today, so I'll be inserting a lot of pictures. And I haven't really done much with tarot other than my deck and walk. But that's about it. I've been focusing mostly this month on studying French and Arabic. Which I've been working on for quite some time, and I tend to, my interests tend to go in cycles, so then I'll take a break for it at some point and get back to tarot and then get back to languages and so forth, and that's probably why it's taken me so long to learn them, but oh well, I don't have a deadline. So anyway, I will put timestamps in the description if something is not of interest, and I'll include a garden update at the end. So the first thing I'll start with is the books I've read, and one of them was Scottish Witchcraft by Barbara Meiklejohn-Free, and it's the second time I've read this one, and it's really good. The foreword is by Ronald Hutton, and it does have some bits that seem a bit Wiccan to me, so I just sort of ignore those bits. But as you can see, it covers several different topics there, some of the history, spirits of Scotland, and some Scottish traditions. And yeah, super interesting book. Might not interest everybody, but I've never even been to Scotland, but I do have some Scottish ancestors, so I find that quite interesting, just personally. Whoops. One of the other books I've read this month was The Triumph of the Moon by Ronald Hutton, and it's fantastic. It's a very thorough history. The focus is on the UK, and he's very straightforward about that, so it doesn't come as a surprise that he doesn't really touch on other areas of the world because those aren't his specialty. But he goes through a lot of the history of what may be known about older traditions, how current traditions came to be, the things that people say are part of older traditions that may in fact have been invented in the 1800s or early 1900s. Which, I mean, is fine if people want to follow those traditions. It's not a criticism of them. It's just interesting to me that people have felt the need throughout history, well, throughout the last 100 years or so, to tie their specific practice back into older practices when that might not really be true. And I don't really think practices always need to be tied into definitively into older practices. There's just so much that can't be known now, and pre-Christian Europe is a very, very long ways away in the past. So anyway, that was very interesting. Another book I read that I'd heard a lot of good things about was Consorting with Spirits by Jason Miller. And okay, I didn't love this book, which some people might dislike my saying, but oh well. As somebody with a Christian upbringing, and this might not be headed in the direction you think it's going to be headed, I actually found his book very based on Christian influences. Demons and devils and those sorts of spirits and so forth. And didn't really focus on anything else. So it made it seem like it was going to be a book about multiple different types of spirits, and really it was just primarily one type of Christian adjacent spirits, which doesn't hold any interest for me anymore. It may have at one point, in terms of I may have hated it for that reason at one point, but here we are. He also considers, there are a couple other things that bothered me a bit, so I wrote them down. He considers Astaroth as a ruler of the Americas, which seems like a heck of a colonial idea, so I wasn't crazy about that. And he conflates many cultures, and I don't know if this is always I don't think it's always a problem to do that, but I also don't think it's always the most respectful solution either to the people or the spirits. So it depends, I guess, on your approach. What I was particularly interested in was plant spirits and ancestors, and he didn't really delve into either of those things. So they didn't really come up. And just for me personally, and this is again just my personal preference, pardon me, there was just too much summoning and compelling for me, and not enough forming healthy relationships. It just seemed too coercive, which doesn't suit me at all. So anyway, that was my take on it. Didn't work for me, but a lot of other people have loved it, so do with that information whatever you like. Some of the other books I've read this month are about languages, and so I've read listened to the audiobooks of 3 by John McWhorter, who's an American linguist. And so they're all from the Great Courses, and one is Language Families of the World, and then the next was The Story of Human Language, and I just finished, just literally 5 minutes ago, Language A to Z, or A to Z, if you're Canadian. And they are fascinating. I really love his approach. He's an amazing lecturer. I mean, really, he's fascinating to listen to. He makes everything a lot of fun. He doesn't really get bogged down in jargon at all, but still manages to communicate really complicated ideas in a way that I can understand them, not being a linguist myself. So I enjoyed that a lot, and I learned a lot about languages, and it definitely confronted some of the things I'd been taught growing up about languages. I know in the West we have a certain idea that, for example, languages that are written are superior somehow to language that is not. And in fact, he said that most of the world's languages are not written, and that's sort of the norm. And writing is a bit strange and a newcomer on the scene, relatively speaking. And he talked a lot about different dialects, dialects versus languages, what dialects mean. He didn't really go into what dialects mean for social status, but he did challenge assumptions about that, in that, you know, there's nothing inherently less about certain dialects, even though society might think if you speak with a certain dialect, certain accent, you're, you know, rural or country or quote unquote ghetto, or whatever assumptions people may have about certain dialects, particularly in North America, and that these are just, he uses the if a Martian was studying languages idea quite often, and asserted that a Martian wouldn't, unless they knew who was in a position of power in a society, for example, wouldn't be able to tell if Standard American or the African American vernacular English dialects were, if one was quote unquote superior to the other, because it isn't. There isn't one that's superior or substandard. There's just non-standard and standard. And standard has nothing to do with the language and everything to do with socio-political situations. So that was an example of one of the things he talked about. And he talked about so many just fascinating things, and things about language that I did not know. Explained some of the spelling issues in English, explained some of the misconceptions that people have about what is quote unquote correct. And I don't think I will ever correct somebody's grammar or spelling or pronunciation again. Not that I make a habit of doing that now. I've hardly ever done that in my life. But I really don't think I ever would again after listening to his books. And also, I think they're free on Audible for the moment. The Great Courses have that thing where they sort of cycle through free courses, and then they're only free for a few months, and then some other group of courses are free for a few months. And so anyway, I think these are, at least a couple of them I think were free. And then I may have got the other one with a credit. I can't remember. Anyway, that was a lot of fun. The next thing, so that was basically the books I've read or listened to in most cases. this month. And so the other things I've been doing this month that have sort of taken the time that may have otherwise been spent on tarot or herbalism or whatever else is working on my French. And I've mostly been doing that by watching. So Apollo 13 is one of my favorite films of all time, and I will never get tired of watching it, ever. I can't even tell you how many times I've watched it in English. And since it was added to Amazon Prime with French dubbing, I've listened to it, watched it at least 3 or 4 times in the last few weeks, and probably will watch it many more times. Both because I love it and to practice my French, because at some point, I assume I'll have watched it so many times I'll have memorized it. It's that sort of movie for me. The other thing I've been doing for French specifically is reading this book, which that's how far I've gotten this month. 60 pages in, I think. Not very far. Albert Hourani's Histoire des Peuples Arabes, or History of the Arab Peoples, which I've read in English, and it's very good. It's maybe not the most, as histories go, I wouldn't say it's dry, but it's not sort of as thrilling with the sort of forward motion of some. However, because I've read it before and know something about the Middle East, I've read many books about the Middle East. So the topic is not, I'm just trying to find the table of contents here, because I'm sure there is one. The topic is not completely unknown to me, but it's also, does it not have a table of contents? Well, that's odd. I thought it did. Oh, maybe it's at the back. Hang on. French books are weird that way. There we go. Table of contents at the back. So I've read a lot of books over the last 15 years or so about the Middle East, and sometimes by Middle Eastern people, often not, which is also why I'm learning French and Arabic, because I want to be able to read other books published in the area. And for a while they were all published in English and French, now more so in Arabic and Farsi, if I ever get to that. That might be a pipe dream, but we'll see. So it goes from the sort of creation of not the modern Middle East, creation of the Middle East at the time of the beginning of Islam. That was a very strange way of wording that sentence. I apologize. But anyway, it sort of starts with what the state of the world was then, and how Islam came to be, and then how after the Prophet Muhammad died, after that, what sort of happened after that, and how it came to be an empire. And eventually, as you can see, it'll get into the Ottoman age and goes up to the European age. And then a little bit after that, since 1939, when was it written? Early 2000s, I think, or 1990s, something like that. So it's not quite 91. So it's not going to be quite modern times, but modern-ish. And that's okay, because I've got other books that cover more modern or current events. So that's what I've been reading. It will probably take me many months, but that's okay, because it's an area that interests me, so I don't mind taking the time to slowly work my way through that. The other thing that's handy about a book like this is a lot of words to do with society, culture, politics, economics, sometimes religion, that sort of thing. They're very, very similar in English and French. So that makes it a bit easier. It sometimes feels a bit like cheating when you come across all the Latin-based words that are the same in English, but that's okay. And then in Arabic, I have finally gotten to the point, and this is maybe slightly embarrassing, but that's okay, where I can read these books. I don't know if anybody else has read these in English, but I did read the See Spot Run books as a kid, and so I've written in the English original, and I've finally gotten to the point where I can, oops, there's the facing page, mostly follow this in Arabic. Some specific words, like the word for cabinet, I might not know still, but you know, I'll get there. And I've got 3 of these books. There's something about finding Spot, Spot on a walk and adventures, and then Spot going to school. So that's fun, sort of. Because they're books for kids, they're a little bit, they don't really hold my interest for very long, so it's just something I sort of read now and again, just for a bit of variety. Mostly, excuse me, what I've been doing is using Link, and maybe I'll insert a few screenshots of what that's like or something like that. But basically, it's a platform where you select your level, you select your language, and then you read these short stories, mini stories at the beginning, they're called. And they're really, really short, very basic vocabulary, and the words you don't know or have never come across before appear in blue, highlighted. And then as you learn them, you create what are called links. L-I-N-G-K is how they spell link. And so the more often you come across these links, the lighter and lighter the yellow highlighting gets until it disappears, and you're considered to know that word. Once you've come across it a certain number of times. I don't know what the algorithm is, tripped over that word, that they use to determine these things, but it's quite fun. And the thing I like the most about it, aside from the fact that it works, oh my goodness, it's the best thing I've found for Arabic so far, it's amazing, is that it's both the audio and the writing. And I've been learning this script for a little while, and it's like you can learn the alphabet in a weekend. That's not the hard thing. One of the hard things is all the sounds that we don't have in English. That's very difficult. But usually the sounds, every time they come up, sound more or less the same, like how they're supposed to, and not like English spelling. So that's nice. But, well, there are a lot of other complicated things about Arabic, but that's one of them that was a bit challenging for me. So it was really nice to hear the audio as I was reading, because otherwise it would have taken me a million years of looking up the same letters over and over again to learn the sounds. And even then, I probably wouldn't have learned them accurately. So that's mostly what I've been using. I've also, Amazon Prime is the best option in Canada that I've found so far. There may be others that I just don't know of, for watching movies dubbed in other languages. So a lot of their big hits, or what they think will be hits, they dub in like 30 different languages, and it's amazing. It's so nice, because it's really hard to find. Well, what I've been looking for is content that I'm familiar with, so that I know the story, so that I can start picking up some of the words. And so native Arabic content, I don't know the stories yet, and I will get to those eventually, I'm sure, but I don't know them yet. And that's just too advanced for me. I'm still very much a beginner. But what's fun about Amazon Prime is they have things like Jack Ryan, which I've been watching. But I've been watching it in Arabic with English subtitles, and I do definitely need the English subtitles. I'm not nearly good enough to pick up most of the words without the subtitles, but I've learned some words from it so far, and it's just interesting to sort of start to get an ear for what the language sounds like. And yeah, so that's been a lot of fun. The last thing I've been using for that is Disney. So I found a source that I won't name online, so as not to get anyone in trouble, to watch Disney movies in Arabic, because they haven't put that on Disney Plus yet in Canada, and I'm really annoyed with them. But Disney movies are fun because something like Mulan or Beauty and the Beast, I don't really have to think about the story. So I don't even need English subtitles, really, because I know the story well enough that I can follow along. And then you're just getting the language without the sort of English intermediary. So that's been a lot of fun. And the last couple things that have been occupying my time, and I've tried to incorporate French learning into this, is watching the Tour de France men and women's editions and the World Cup. So that's been a lot of fun this month. One of the commentators, though, for the Tour de France French commentary sounds so much like a kid's cartoon that it sometimes drives me a bit around the bend. His voice is so peculiar and so very much like a caricature of a voice. It's so funny. I don't know, and I don't know if it's his natural way of speaking or if it's a voice he puts on for commentating. I don't know, but it's very distracting, and I can't say I really enjoy it. So that has been less successful for language learning, but very successful for fun, because I've just watched it in English. And the Tour de France Femme is, well, they've only got a couple more days to go. So that's fun. Anyway, that is all I've got here. And now I will switch to the outdoors and show you the state of my slightly chaotic balcony garden. I actually forgot I'd done this earlier this month, so I'll insert this clip here. I edged a deck for the first time. I'd never done this before, and so I picked this sort of not overly flamboyant gold color and love it, and it worked really well. I followed Don Michel's method for adding edging color to a deck, and that seemed to work really well, using these same brilliance drops, I think they're called, these little ink pads that she also recommended as one good option. I think she had several in her videos. Anyway, this was for the Gentle Tarot and the Song of the Grandmother's Oracle, and I love how it turned out. And then one other thing I did this month that's sort of tarot related was I started reading through the Wands suit, at least. I can't remember if I got any further, in the French guidebook for the Racine Daisy Tarot. Here's my balcony garden. I clearly need to do a fair bit of pruning. There's some dead branches of things, and then on the tomato plants, just some massively overgrown branches of things, and sweeping. Oh, and there are the pigeons. I needed to do some sweeping. But anyway, I need to pull some of these off, but they're beautiful and doing amazing. And surprisingly, so is the rosemary, which never does very well for me. The chamomile is not very well, but this tomatillo, I mean, it's growing sideways, but it's also growing really well, so okay, I guess. I have some weird little plants in every corner. Oh, this one's flowering. Don't really want it to do that yet. But it's, well, it might be hopeless for that one now, also because this is the spinach that is growing around it and towards the sun. The Volunteer Lamb's Quarter is massive and delicious, and I love it. The strawberries were not doing well for a while, but seem to be doing better now. It's not a good year for the mint, but it is a good year for the tomatoes. As you can see, I'm starting to get quite a few of them, so I'm very excited about that. Oh, this one's gone to flower too. It's probably too hot for it now. It's a bit ridiculous out here. Well, today is lovely. It's a cool rainy day, which is my favorite kind. But it's been very hot and dry, so I don't think those lettuces particularly like that all that much. So I might actually leave some of the flowers on for the bees. Marigolds for my grandma are doing amazing. The dill is surviving but tiny. Not really sure what's happening there. Oh, here comes the chickweed. Plantain is also doing great. This, I think, is an eggplant, which has taken over this and sort of overshadowed the self-heal there, which is not going to make it. The Saskatoon berry bush is doing all right, though, so that's lovely. I think these might be stray wheat or oat. I'm not sure how they ended up there, but they did, so okay. I had a earlier than anticipated powdery mildew problem, so I don't think the squash is going to make it, but the thyme will be alright. There's some basil that I need to do something about. It's gone to flower almost, and some is this the... No, this is the bee balm, I think. I can't remember. Definitely got some mint in there, some more lamb's quarter, some... not sure what that is. Grass of some sort. I'll have to look it up and make sure it's not invasive or anything. And that's not so pretty, that corner, but it's functional, so what can you do? This is pretty good, though. Oh, the spider moved its web. I don't know if you can see that, but a spider tried to build a web across these two planters, and then I had to water the plants, and so apologies to the spider. But it's trying again, and I mean, if it wants to eat the mosquitoes out here, that's fine with me. There are a lot of, just about tripped over stuff, dragonflies in the area this year, so I've not noticed very many mosquitoes. The peppers are doing all right. They seem to like the hot weather. I can't remember what this is. Some specialty kind of basil, I think. And the lemon thyme is amazing. And it's a very nice tea on hot days. And all the little lettuces, I think, are done for the season. Oh well. So that's the state of my balcony garden. Slightly overgrown, but I like it anyway, and it's my own fault it's overgrown. I should get out here and prune, which I might do this weekend if I can muster the energy. We'll see. Anyway, that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.